A hulking black dog loomed in the hallway painting, unnaturally balanced on its hind legs, standing tall and eerie like a person. One paw was lifted, held just before its lips, as if swearing me to secrecy, its eyes hinting at some dark understanding we shared. I hadn't given the painting much thought, just a new decoration in my parents' house since I'd left for college, though I couldn't shake the feeling it hadn't been there when I was growing up. Now I was back, sleeping on the floor in my old room, which had been stripped of its old comforts and memories. The shelves were bare. My fantasy novels were boxed up somewhere in the garage, the games I'd left behind long since tossed. It felt surreal, lying on the hard floor where I used to dream, reading late into the night, haunted by the innocent, invisible fears of my younger self. Those shadows had now been replaced by the cold, lifeless silhouettes of exercise equipment. I couldn't sleep. Every old memory seemed to press down on me, whispering of a person I had been, someone I thought I would grow into, but hadn't. My ambitions, my passions, they all felt distant, like echoes of someone else. I lay there, wondering if the child I once was had withered away entirely, replaced by a stranger. Eventually, unable to shake the restless thoughts, I got up to use the bathroom. Passing the hallway, I found myself staring again at that painting. By day, the dog had just seemed odd, but under the moonlight, thick, angry strokes of paint seemed to bristle, giving the fur a life of its own. The teeth that had seemed like a smile now flashed as a snarling grin. Its dark eyes felt alive, filled with something sardonic, mocking me as if it understood me too well. In the morning, I checked again, but the dog was calm, its fur softer in the daylight. The snarl had vanished into an innocent smile. I asked my parents about the painting, and they exchanged puzzled glances. Neither remembered hanging it, each assuming the other had bought it. Somehow they decided it had been there since I was a kid, and I must have just forgotten. The idea unsettled me. How much else had I forgotten? My parents' reassurances that it had always been there left me strangely relieved, a comforting lie that softened the sense of loss creeping over me. Maybe everything I remembered and cherished had stayed with me, while the rest, the things that didn't matter, could simply fade away. That night, sleep came more easily, but I woke with a start at the sound of scratching, a steady, soft noise, dragging from somewhere behind the walls. Heart pounding, I threw off my sleeping bag, leaping up, only to realize it was just the handlebars of the treadmill, casting an odd shadow. I settled back, trying to calm down, only for the scratching to start again. It wasn't a mouse. This sound was heavier, slower. A thick, tearing noise like a blade slicing through fabric. I flicked on the light and traced the length of the wall, my heart pounding. The thought of something scurrying inside was bad enough, but the scratching felt too distant, too deep for that. Then came a heavy thump. This wasn't from inside the wall, it was beyond it. Footsteps. I flung open the door and switched on the hallway light, catching a dark flicker at the edge of my vision. I rubbed my eyes, my heart hammering, and then noticed it. The painting lay flat on the carpet, face down. Maybe the nail had finally loosened, I thought. Maybe it was that nail scraping against the wall, and the thump as it hit the floor. But even as I tried to calm myself, something gnawed at me. I convinced myself the flash of movement was just a shadow cast by the treadmill, until I lifted the painting. A deep, jagged slash marred the center of the canvas, but the torn art wasn't what turned my blood to ice. The dog was gone. I stared at the empty brushstrokes, my fingers tracing the edges of the ripped fabric, as if the dog might somehow still be hidden there. But there was nothing, just heavy strokes of empty, chaotic blue paint. Suddenly, scratching and a loud crash echoed from the far side of the house where my parents slept. I sprinted toward the sound, but as I reached the hallway, I froze. A low, chilling howl reverberated, close inside the house. It was a wolf's howl, desperate and eerie. My parents were shouting, and I tore down the hall. I flung open their door. Blood was everywhere, splattered on the walls, pooling on the floor, even the ceiling fan dripping with it. My parents hadn't made it out of bed. Their throats were torn open in single brutal bites, as though the creature had worked quickly, efficiently. Another howl rang out, fainter now, echoing through a shattered window as if moving away. It knew I was there. My room was closer than theirs. So why hadn't it touched me? I staggered to the window, breathing hard, and there, on the edge of the trees, was a dark figure. Nothing more than a silhouette in the shadows. It stood upright, unnervingly human-like. Its eyes gleamed, fixed right on me, almost as if it had been waiting for me to notice. And then slowly, it dropped to all fours and melted into the forest. I don't know what possessed me to follow it that night, but I felt a hollow, blazing anger clawing up inside me. I had no idea where I was going, or if I could even find it, but I knew one thing. I wanted to kill it. If I focused on that, I wouldn't have to think about the bodies, or the thoughts creeping in, dark and relentless. I grabbed the handgun my dad kept in his desk. He'd taught me to use it, though I never thought I'd need to. The creature left no doubt of its trail. Streaks of blood marked the way, branches bent and snapped. I followed it through the dense woods, each step fueling my rage, smothering the terror with anger as raw as the night air. But then, the trail ended. Footprints simply vanished, as if it had taken flight. I stood in the silence of the woods, turning in slow, helpless circles as the peace of the night closed in on me. And with that stillness came the thoughts, the crushing disbelief, the anger, the awful, bottomless grief. My hands shook as I raised the gun, firing into the empty darkness over and over, each shot echoing against the trees, hoping to drown out the screams in my head. Then came a rustling, far off, answering my shots. Something was moving, and I was right behind it, running into the night. I didn't care what it was anymore. I was going to shoot it. Even the thought of killing a helpless animal felt like it would take the edge off, release something of the turmoil inside me. I pressed on through the woods, heart pounding, until I reached a rise overlooking a sudden dip in the ground. There a flash of black, something shaggy, running upright on two legs. The dog, or whatever monster it was. I aimed and fired wildly, but it slipped out of view. I took several more shots, my rage echoing in the empty woods. But no movement answered, no glint of an eye or crack of a twig. It was gone. As I lowered the gun, a strange sight caught my eye below. A small clearing, littered with remnants of a campsite, a cold fire pit, a few scattered cans, a worn-out road mat lying flat on the ground, not an animal's lair. This was something stranger. Beside the fire, I found paintbrushes, their bristles stiff with dried paint. A stack of frames sat nearby, each containing eerie paintings of dogs standing upright, a single paw raised to their mouths as if in secrecy. Beside them were an equal number of empty frames, each with plain, thick backgrounds matching those of the dog portraits, the same haunting, empty brushstrokes. There was only one chilling conclusion to draw from it all. Some human monster was orchestrating this horror, planting these paintings as traps. First, they'd bring the dog portrait into a house, maybe sold or gifted without question. Then, at night, they'd break in and replace the painting with one where the dog had vanished, leaving a torn background to look as if the creature had come to life and escaped. And always, they'd leave a witness, someone to tell the tale of a haunting. The thought chilled me as I tried to piece together the twisted reasoning behind it. Maybe there was no logic at all. Maybe the kill itself was the reason. Imagining the fear of someone who couldn't trace the painting's origin made the horror sharper, as if the killer thrived on making people feel helpless. The power they must feel, tearing apart families, shattering a person's grasp on reality in a single vicious blow. There was almost a dark elegance in the brutality. Even if the victim never spoke of it, they'd carry that nightmare forever. To haunt someone, to be the single most unforgettable force in their life while remaining completely unknown. It was power of a unique, chilling kind. to be remembered so deeply, yet invisibly, while the victim had no idea who or what had destroyed them. Maybe that's why he left this behind. Maybe the killer wanted to be known, to have his work appreciated. Maybe he'd even led me here on purpose, wanting to share his secret, to let someone understand. After all, a secret this dark can eat a person from the inside out. In a way, I could almost understand it.